Welcome to Upside Down Mirror, one woman's true story of a twin flame journey, a reflection of true love, true hate, and everything between, where everything and nothing matters at the same time. Paradigms shatter as mirrors of shadows cut through indestructible layers, testing the sands of time. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of Upside Down Mirror. I would like to begin by bringing this back to the fact that this is a twin flame podcast, because I know now we're talking about things in my life and situations that don't really have to do with significant others or relationships. But everything that you do in your life is part of your twin flame journey. Because remember, a twin flame is a reflection of where you're at, who you are. That is why it's twin. Twin is someone like you. It's a reflection of you. So you're only going to manifest a twin flame based on where you're at. And what I believe after experiencing so much, and even further experiences that I'll go in later in the podcast, is that the twin flame is an essence and it can actually travel through different people. But you're only going to attract where you're at. So if I love myself 50%, then I'm going to attract someone who shows me love 50% of the time. If I have guilt, doubt, shame, fear, self-loathing, and feel insecure about myself, then I'm going to attract someone who treats me in that manner. So I believe the ultimate union in life is the union of self-love, really honoring yourself and getting to know yourself on a deep soul level and unconditionally loving who you are. When you love yourself unconditionally like that, you'll be in a space where you can be alone and be just fine. But the cool thing is you're never going to be alone when you're in that space. Because when you love yourself that much, you're letting that frequency be who you are. And then the law of attraction kicks in and you receive that love back. So everything in our life is essentially the twin flame journey. It's a journey toward loving us on a soul level. People often ask, what's my purpose in life? There's only one answer to that question. Your purpose is you. Your purpose is loving you on a soul level, no matter what. Honoring yourself so much that you allow yourself to be in joy and to live your heaven on earth. When you honor yourself that much, your light body will activate and you will heal everyone around you just by being you. So I do want you to realize, no matter what I talk about, no matter what I'm going through, I do call this my twin flame journey. And there's branches to my twin flame journey that may seem like I'm going off path, but I'm really not. Because everything in my life, everything in your life has to do with the journey of self-discovery and self-love and truly honoring who you are and exposing yourself. Just like I'm exposing myself now. It's best to hide in plain sight. The people that love you, the people that honor you, will always be there for you because you're always there for you. Okay, back to the prison life. Around now, it was very close to Christmas. One of the most disappointing things about that whole journey was being in prison through the holidays. I grew up with a very festive family. We celebrated Halloween, went trick-or-treating, we celebrated Thanksgiving, celebrated Christmas. It was kind of like the typical Hallmark family Christmas is what I was used to. So being in here and being away from my children, having everything taken away from me on Christmas was quite the blow. And it seemed like Christmas Eve and Christmas were specifically very hard days, and I will tell you why. So it was Christmas Eve, and people spent some time decorating inside, the unit, I guess that's what I'll call it. But it was interesting because if you think energy, and I really want you to go into energy, where there's good, there's bad, there's a duality to energy. You don't want to look at it and judge it. It just is. So as people are putting effort into decorating, and you can tell they're getting their Christmas spirit and they're trying to be jolly, which people do, it's almost like it brings out that negativity. And I know you guys know this from everyday life, being in the career of psychology and counseling. During the holidays, we tended to have a lot of people that were really depressed, because it brings out those shadow energies. It brings out the lower frequency energies. As spirit goes up, as your people get happy and jolly, then you're going to get that duality. You're going to get that depression that comes out. So it was the same in this environment. And so as people were decorating and they're getting prepared for Christmas, it just seemed like a lot of bizarre things were happening. And Christmas Eve was one of them. There was a girl who tried to kill herself by, she had a battery, and somehow she used the battery to catch her bed on fire. And so imagine this, you're talking about a place that already looks like a big dungeon warehouse. It's very dim in there, very stagnant energy. People were behind bars, and all of a sudden there's fire everywhere and smoke, and then all you could hear was people screaming and yelling in agony. I can still see this. It was like a scene of being in hell. People in cages, screaming, yelling, fire everywhere, the sounds of agony, suicidal ideation. So then water, because you have the sprinkler system, all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of water that's spraying everywhere, and people are running out, because the place is on fire. So this was on Christmas Eve, and we went into the gym where we all just sat for hours and hours and hours. And meantime, there was also an incident where during this time, when the cell doors came open, which they automatically do when you're on fire, someone actually was thinking about revenge. They took a pencil, ran into someone else's cell, and stabbed that girl in the eye because they were looking for the right opportunity. So they were able to think on their feet and think, okay, I want to stab this girl in the eye. This is the perfect time to do it. So this girl's bleeding from her eye. Everything's on fire. There's smoke. It was like so much negative energy at one time to digest. And I remember just sitting there in shock thinking, wow, this is a really horrible Christmas Eve. So what I did is I got my book out, because I was writing a book, and I'm probably going to take the chapters of that book and put it in the book that I'm writing. I'm going to make this into a book with exercises. But I was able to, during that time, start writing about the importance of going into that 0 point source energy. So all of this was going on around me. I was able to take my journal and just start writing. And I was able to write different techniques and different states of mind and different breath work to do to be able to deal with situations like this. And I even remember while I was writing this, because now in the gym everybody was around talking to each other, I could hear people talking about what they should have done differently not to be in prison. And I don't mean like rectifying their behaviors. I mean things like, oh, when I killed this person, I left them here. I should have put bricks on them and put them in the lake, or I wouldn't be here. I mean, these are the conversations that I was hearing around me. It was very negative energy. So, writing that journal during that time was a very powerful experience for me, because I remember thinking, even through all this, I was able to go into that source, God, creator energy, and know that no matter what, no matter where I was, I still had the ability to access that. And that's what I did. Calm myself down, started being the author of my own story and writing about my upcoming parole and my upcoming release from there. So the day after Christmas, I got really good news. I finally got the date of my hearing, which was January 11th. So it only took a little over 2 months from me entering into the system to be able to get my parole hearing, which was really unheard of. I actually had many girls come up to me and ask me how I'm able to manifest this sort of thing in my life, how I was able to get a hearing so fast and allow things to go so smoothly. And of course, I went over both the administrative aspects of it, but also the spiritual aspects of manifesting and writing your own story as well. And believe it or not, people are very receptive to spiritual things when they can see that it's working for you. I did notice a lot of self-sabotaging behaviors going on around me, such as one of the girls that I was in there with, her name was Rabbit, was in there for a very short amount of time because she was there for a violation of probation, which you can get out rather quickly when you're there for violation of probation, even without a parole hearing. However, she had about a week left and she decided to do drugs that were floating around the prison. And I guess someone told on her because she was drug tested, and then she was put in what they call the holding or the hole for like 6 weeks. And I remember thinking about a lot of the self-sabotaging behaviors that went on around that, and her telling me about her going home to her father, who she didn't think loved her, and she didn't really have anybody on the outside that she felt would accept her back. So then that's when the subconscious comes into play, and there's a part of her that knew what she was doing. There's a part of her that didn't want to get out. There's a part of her that purposely sabotaged her leaving that prison. The day after New Year's, I got really big news that shocked me and left me rattled a little bit while I was in there. I was in the shower and Danielle comes running up to me and she says, Rebecca, I'm leaving. You have to get out of the shower. Hurry up, I'm leaving. The thing about Danielle is her paperwork was all messed up. We didn't even know when she was eligible to get a parole hearing. According to the way the dates looked in the system, when you looked up the Maryland Judicial, she should have been out a couple months ago because they weren't able to hold her past a certain date. That turned out to be the case because when they found out that they should have already let her out, they were going to have to pay her for the time that they made her serve, and she shouldn't have been in there. So the day they found that out, which was the day after New Year's, they wanted her out immediately. So they walked right up to her and said, you got to get your stuff, you got to leave. And I came out and I asked her, what's going on? She said, they just walked up to me. They said, you have to get your stuff, you're out of here. And she said, I haven't had any time to set up anything. Her mom hadn't finished setting up where she was going to live in Hagerstown. None of that was planned. So at this point, she was to get all of her stuff, get dressed, and they were going to just take a bus and drop her off wherever she wanted dropped off. And the only place that I knew she knew was the places in Baltimore that she had previously hung out. So it was a very heart-wrenching situation for her and myself. I could see the fear in her eyes. She was half excited to be getting out, but I could see that she was terrified about where she was going. She hugged me. It's like she didn't even want to leave because she left some stuff there. And she said, don't worry, I think I'm going to come back and get this. And I looked at her like, well, I don't think you are. But, I let her leave it there. And I told her, I was like, don't worry, I will definitely be in touch with you when I get out, and we hugged, and then she left, and I just remember feeling like, wow, my angel has left. The person who has guided me through this whole entire situation has left. And what I realized is she left me standing with my own torch. I was able to take her teachings and what she taught me and her good vibe and the way she looked at positive at everything and her sense of humor, and I was able to still stand strong even though I was really nervous about who I was going to be with. I spent that night alone, but when morning came around, my new cellmate was a 24-year-old girl who they had nicknamed Toe because she literally had a tattoo across her cheek that said Toe. Whenever you asked her what had happened, she said that basically she was dating a guy named Joe who wanted to tattoo his name on her and somehow spelled his name wrong or used a T instead of a J. So she had the tattooed Toe across her cheek. She spent her time trying to get her high school diploma. So for the little bit of time that I was in there with her, I remember trying to get her up in the morning, trying to get her to school. She was nice enough. We played card games and chatted a little bit. There wasn't much to say because of the age difference, and there was such a difference in our interests. But I was still very fortunate and grateful to have her. The reason that she was in there is because she was in drugs and she got in trouble for doing, I think, meth and heroin. And then when she got caught, what she told me is that she was tased by some police officers and she fought back. So she ended up getting charges pressed against her for violence against the police. I actually heard quite a bit of that in prison. Stories about people who are on drugs and Narcan, the police trying to get them under control by tasing them and then them fighting back against the tasers and hitting the cops and then getting charges pressed against them for that as well. At this point, I was just passing each day by, waiting for January 11th, so excited that this seemed to be coming to an end. On January 11th, I was extremely nervous as I went before the parole board. You hear all these stories about how you better say the right thing, you better admit guilt, and getting the wrong person, they can just deny you. So I was very nervous because I was thinking, what if I get the wrong person? You know, I'll have to wait God knows how long before another hearing comes. So finally, on January 11th, I walked into the room and there was a gentleman sitting there with a couple other people, but I could tell that he was the lead. And he looked at me and he took a deep breath. And I was waiting to speak and preparing to say what I needed to say. And he said, "Are you ready to get out of here?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "You're leaving." And I was shocked because I hadn't even said anything. And I said, "Oh, I don't have to say anything." He goes, "Do you want to say anything?" And I said, "No." And he picked up a stack of letters and he said that he had so many of my clients write letters to them, clients that I have helped in the past, especially the children that I had helped. And he said that after reading the letters, after reading what I had done for the community in the most part, and how many people I had helped, especially the children and the sexually abused children, he said that there was no question in his mind that I was leaving as soon as administratively possible. He said as soon as they could get the paperwork together, I was out of there. I was so thankful. I was so happy. I can't even begin to tell you. I practically skipped out of the place. I was all smiles. Now I just have to wait for the paperwork to go through. So of course I called my sister, my youngest sister, who had been helping me with this, and I told her to do whatever it took to get that paperwork moving as smoothly and fastly as possible. And I believe within a few days we knew that my actual release date would be February 12th. I had a few weeks to go, and knowing that I was going to get out made these weeks drag on even slower than normal. I remember just hanging out with the girls that I was used to hanging out with, staying out of trouble, trying to exercise, reading, trying to keep myself healthy, calling home, preparing for my release. And then something happened that I did not expect, and this was not even a week before my actual release date. Do you remember me talking about the woman Jerry, the big black woman in the unit who had a crush on me? And I thought that she had given up on that, especially since she knew I was leaving. But I actually ended up getting set up, which was very, very scary for me. There was a woman from one of the cells that came to me, and she was in there for a while longer, so she had quite a bit of time ahead of her. But she had this television, and she said to me, I really would like to have some commissary. I really would like to have some food to be able to eat. Why don't you trade me some food for watching my television a few nights? That'll help you get by the rest of your days and distract you. So I did not know that this was taboo, that you should not do this. And of course I was like, okay, that's a good deal. Well, she looks at me and she says, the only thing is I need this television back working. She goes, don't break it. I really need this to work when I get it back. And I said, oh, don't worry, I'm not going to break it. And so she gave me the television. I gave her the commissary. And then I plugged the television in that night, and it just didn't work. It did not work. And then I knew right then that I had been set up, that this woman was going to expect this television back working. What I found out was that Jerry had set this up, that Jerry had went up to her and suggested that she come to me and give me the television, and I had commissary to give her. So I knew I was in big trouble. I just had to figure out what to do about it. So the next day, whenever this woman came back to get her television, I did the only thing that I knew to do, which was to explain to her that the television was not working when she gave it to me, that it was broke, but I would do my best to find somebody or do something where we can get the television working. She became so angry, and she looked at me, and this was during lunch, and she said, I wanted that television back working. I told you that it needed to be working. And she said, when I get back from lunch, she said, I am going to kick your ass. She's like, we are going to fight. She's like, one thing I can tell you is that you and I are going to the hole. She said, I have nothing to lose. She said, I'm in here for at least another 6 to 7 years. She goes, 6 weeks, and the hole is nothing to me. And what she knew is she knew that no matter what, if her and I got into a fight, they're not going to spend time figuring out what it was about and who was in the right and who was in the wrong. Eventually they do that, but first they take both parties of the fight and they put them in this place for at least 4 to 6 weeks before they determine, who was at fault. I was getting out in less than a week. That would have ruined my whole entire parole if she would have came back and fought me. She was really angry. She was acting very, very aggressive, and I could tell she was somebody that just didn't care. So she went to lunch. I skipped lunch because she said, once I get back from lunch, this is when all of this is going to happen. I skipped lunch just trying to figure out what to do. I could have went up to the guards and explained to them what had happened, how I had been set up, but even that alone, that wouldn't have gotten taken care of in less than an hour. And when she got back, she would have still tried to fight me. They didn't act that fast. You can't really get anywhere in prison by tattletaling. It just doesn't work. So I decided that was the moment I was going to practice what I preached. This moment was so extreme for me. I was so excited about getting out in less than a week, and I knew that if I didn't change my reality in less than an hour, when she came back, my whole life was going to change. I was not getting out. So what I did is I went in my bed, I laid, once again, I did the surrendering and the giving up and went into my heart space. Went so deeply in my heart space, I remember feeling like a floating sensation, as though my body was on the bed, but I was expanding through my heart and becoming part of everything that existed. I started to do a technique where I was releasing any guilt, shame, doubt, fear, self-loathing, any of those shadow energies that cause bad things to happen for us. I was releasing that. Doing some Ho'oponopono with I love you, please forgive me, thank you, it is done. I was basically scrubbing my insides, scrubbing my soul, giving myself an extreme amount of self-love. Once again, really taking this time to live in the moment, be in the here and now, bask in love, forgiveness, peace, all of that energy, those high frequency energies, and releasing the shadow energies. That's the biggest part of this, is releasing those shadow energies. And I spent all of lunch doing this, doing everything that I teach in what is now the Awake Academy. I spent doing this hour of this lunch period. So right after lunch, she comes back, just as promised. I took a deep breath. I looked at her. I was ready for about anything. And she looked at me. She pulls me to her. She hugs me and says, "Don't worry about it. It's okay. I forgive you. Maybe we can figure something out later." She walks out. I hear her talking to somebody, and that was done. At that moment, I knew that everything that I've ever learned in spirituality and taught in spirituality, I know that it is real. I know that this work can change any circumstance in our life. This was proof to me. This was all the proof I've ever needed. That moment changed my entire life. I truly, truly believe in the power of the here and now, the power of surrendering into that God creator source energy, which is just that energy of unconditional love of all that is that connects us together. After that, everything went smoothly, and on my release date, I was able to get out, be reunited with my family. Sean was in Michigan and I was in Maryland, so at first I did have to spend some time at my sister's house, my oldest sister's, which was a beautiful experience. So that's where I went directly afterwards. It was my sister's house to spend some time with her. During the next couple months, when I was living with my sister, I was focusing on reuniting with my family and creating a living space where we can all come together once again, my children and I. Sean came to visit me from Michigan quite often, and I visited him quite often, and we were getting very, very close. And then something happened that was extremely disheartening, something that made me cry for about 3 days straight. I had decided to look up Danielle because after all, she was only about 2.5 to 3 hours away from me, and I really wanted to see her again and thank her for everything that she had done for me. I knew whereabouts she was, not exactly, so I Googled it. I knew her first and last name, and when I did, her obituary came up. She died about 2 months after she got out of prison. She died of an overdose. I remember just feeling awful, just knowing that was the crossroads that I saw when I held her hand. I knew if she went back there, if she went back to the place in Baltimore where she had come from, that was going to happen. But the amount of grief I felt was extremely overwhelming. And I remember right then and there knowing that I was going to do whatever I could do for humanity to help with addictions. She was an amazing angelic being with two beautiful children. She had tremendous light around her, an infectious personality. And I actually did. I cried for about 3 days straight. I was unable to get out of my bed. There was so much sorrow in that. I had bonded with her so much. To this day, when I am doing natural plant medicine ceremonies with people who have addiction issues, I will feel the essence of Danielle come in and help. So I do know that she's an angelic being that exists. And I do call upon her often. And also, as a note, as soon as I got out of prison and I acclimated back into life, I noticed that my psychic abilities, the ability to read people and tap into energies, came back, but even more so. It was so much at a different level, because that day that I surrendered the last time in the prison cell, in reference to the television, I must have opened up something, because I think that I really tapped into that source energy. So nothing's been the same since then. My ability to channel and to receive information has become very, very strong, because I think I realized how little use the brain and the human ego are to our overall creation in life. I'm going to stop here, and I hope I see you guys for episode 13 of Upside Down Mirror.